BoBo Kids. Hello everyone, I'm BoBo. Today we will continue to learn to draw and color Princess Aurora and listen to the fairy tale Sleeping Beauty. Let's get started. Many years ago, in a kingdom far away there lived a king and a queen. They were very happy, but sometimes they sighed because they did not have a son to brighten their lives. That was one of their greatest wishes, but even so, the longed-for son did not come. After some time, their dream came true and the queen had a beautiful baby girl whom they named Aurora. The king and queen could not hide their immense joy and decided to organize a party. They invited their relatives, friends, and acquaintances, as well as the fairies who had always protected the kingdom. However, there were 13 fairies, and as they only had 12 golden plates to serve them at dinner, they decided to invite only 12 of them. The feast was celebrated with great splendor. Everyone danced, laughed, and ate, almost at the end. The guests approached the kings to meet Princess Aurora personally and offer her a gift. When it was the turn of the fairies, each one gave Princess Aurora her best gifts. One gave her virtue, another beauty, the next one wealth, and so each one gave her a precious gift as a present. However, when the 11th fairy had finished giving her her gift, the fairy who had not been invited entered the room unexpectedly. She wanted revenge because she had been excluded. So without introducing herself or looking at anyone, she shouted to Princess Aurora, "The king's daughter, when she reaches her 15th birthday, will be pricked with a spinning spindle and will fall dead immediately and without another word." He turned and left the room. Everyone was stunned, and the king and queen began to weep disconsolately. However, no one had noticed that there was still one fairy who had not announced her gift. The fairy stepped forward, reached Princess Aurora and said, "I cannot remove the evil spell, but I can do something to help. When the princess turns 15, she will not die, but will go into a deep sleep for 100 years until a prince awakens her with a kiss of true love." The next day, the king tried by all means to prevent such misfortune from being fulfilled. So he ordered that every spinning machine or spindle that existed in the kingdom be destroyed. And in the years that followed, every possible precaution was taken. Meanwhile, the gifts that the other 12 fairies had given them were fulfilled. The princess became more and more beautiful. Modest, intelligent, and knowledgeable. In fact, she immediately charmed everyone who met her. On her 15th birthday, the king and queen left the palace early and the maiden was left alone. She took the opportunity to tour the palace, entered the rooms, the halls, the kitchen, and finally arrived at the foot of an old tower. She had never seen it before, so she climbed the narrow spiral stairs that led up to a small door. On the door was an old key placed in the lock. The princess turned it and opened it. In the room was an old woman sitting spinning on a spindle. "Good morning, madam. What are you doing?" said Princess Aurora. "I am spinning," answered the old woman. "And what is the thing that spins and makes such a beautiful sound?" asked the young lady again. Princess Aurora approached and wanted to try it. However, as soon as she touched the spindle, the curse came true. She pricked her finger and fell to the ground. At the cries of the old woman, the servants of the palace came. But the water, the pinching on the cheek, and all attempts to revive the young girl were in vain. When they returned, the kings heard the sad news and Disconsolate had the princess placed on the bed in the most beautiful room of the palace. The news also reached the fairies, who immediately came to the palace. The same fairy who had changed the curse had a brilliant idea. She would also make the rest of the kingdom sleep, so that when the princess woke up, she would not be alone with her magic wand. She went through the whole kingdom to plunge it into a deep sleep. The servants remained motionless in their chores. The horses fell asleep in the stable, the dogs on the lawn, the pigeons in the eaves of the roof, the flies on the walls, even the flaming hearth fire was without heat. The roasting meat stopped, and the cook, who at that moment was going to scold his young assistant, fell asleep. The wind stopped, and in the trees near the castle, not a leaf moved. The kings also fell asleep in their royal seats. In addition, the fairy made a strange, lush forest grow around the palace to keep it hidden from the curious. However, the story of the Sleeping Beauty became popular throughout the region, and as time went by, some of the king's sons began to arrive to try to break through the wall of thorns and reach the castle. None of them could make it, because the thorns were so close together that they could not cut them. After 100 years, a prince passing by heard the story from an old man who said that behind the thorns was a beautiful princess who had been asleep for 100 years. Just like the kings and their court, the young prince wanted to know if it was true and set out on an adventure. The prince began to cut the thorns, and the branches fell easily in his path. So, little by little, he approached the palace and began to see the horses, the hunting dogs, the doves in the eaves. Everything was very strange. They seemed to be sleeping soundly. When he entered the palace, the flies were sleeping on the walls. The cook still had his hand out to scold the assistant, and the maid was sitting with the black hen she had to pluck. He continued onward, and in the great hall, he saw the whole court lying asleep, and on the throne, the king and queen. He continued to walk through the palace, and finally reached the tower where the beautiful Princess Aurora was resting. He approached the room, opened the door, and saw the young girl lying on the bed. She was so beautiful that he was smitten with her. Then he approached her and, unable to restrain himself, kissed her. Instantly, the princess opened her eyes and woke up, looked at him sweetly, and they embraced. At the same time, the whole court began to wake up. The horses in the stable got up and shook themselves. The hunting dogs got up. The pigeons in the eaves of the roof took flight. The fire in the hearth raised its flames and finished cooking the meat. The cook finished scolding his assistant, and the maid plucked the hen ready for the stew. The princess appeared before the kings, who happily embraced their daughter. And days later, they celebrated the wedding of the prince and princess, to which the fairies were invited, and so they lived very happily. So the Sleeping Beauty fairy tale has ended. Our painting of Princess Aurola in the story is also completed. Like and subscribe to the channel to watch more interesting videos.